From the outside, if you had looked at our marriage, you'd probably think we were doing fine. We had a decent house in the suburbs, 2 cars parked in the driveway, and a comfortable enough life that didn't look too different from anyone else around us. My neighbors saw me mowing the lawn every weekend, and my wife, Julia, would wave politely at them when she drove off to meet her friends. People probably thought we were just another ordinary couple, working through the ups and downs of life together. But behind closed doors, it was a very different picture. The truth was, Julia had a way of making me feel like I was never enough. It wasn't always direct, at least not in the beginning. In the early years of our marriage, her complaints were small, subtle. Comments about how our vacations weren't as glamorous as her friends' trips, or how the gifts I gave her weren't as expensive as what other women were posting online. I brushed it off then, telling myself it was normal. Everyone compares sometimes, right? But as the years went by, those little comments grew sharper, heavier, and harder to ignore. I worked as an IT technician. Not a flashy job, not a millionaire maker, but it was honest work. I paid the bills, kept food on the table, and made sure we never had to worry about the lights being cut or the rent being late. I thought that kind of stability mattered. I thought that being reliable, faithful, and present was worth more than the size of my paycheck. But Julia didn't see it that way. For her, money was the measurement of love, success, and even masculinity. If I made more, she'd be happier. If I bought her luxury, she'd respect me. And when she looked at me, I could see it in her eyes, that silent judgment, as if I'd failed some test I didn't even know I was supposed to take. At first, I tried harder. I picked up extra shifts, worked weekends, brought home a little more cash. I thought maybe if I could give her more, she'd soften, she'd see I was trying. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. The moment I made one improvement, she'd find another standard to measure me against. Why don't we have a bigger house like the Martins? Why don't you take me shopping like Melissa's husband does? Why don't you dress better? You'd look more professional if you wore suits. It was like living under constant evaluation, and I was always failing. The breaking point came one evening, though it didn't feel like a movie scene at first. It was just a regular night, the kind that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I just come home from work. My shirt was wrinkled from the long day, and I smelled faintly of sweat and printer toner. Julia was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in hand, scrolling through social media. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "Hey," I said, dropping my keys in a bowl by the counter. She muttered back, distracted. I sighed, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. I tried making small talk, but she cut me off with that tone she used when she was gearing up to say something unpleasant. "You know," she started, eyes still glued to her phone, "if you had money, you'd be a better husband. Our marriage would be happier." Just like that. No hesitation, no filter, no sugarcoating. Her words hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I froze, staring at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. She finally looked up at me, and I swear there was no regret in her face, no recognition of how cruel those words were. Just this cold, sharp honesty, as if she'd been holding it in and decided to let it out because she thought I could handle it. I laughed, but it wasn't because it was funny. It was that nervous, bitter laugh you let out when something hurts too much to keep inside. "So that's what it comes down to, huh?" I asked, my voice lower than I expected. "Money. That's all it takes for you to measure whether I'm worth being married to." She shrugged, casual, like she was talking about the weather. "I'm just saying, life would be easier. I wouldn't have to worry about bills or saving for everything. If you had more money, maybe I wouldn't feel so stuck." That word, stuck, cut deeper than anything else. She said it like being with me was a burden, like I was a weight dragging her down. For a moment, I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to remind her of all the sacrifices I had made. How I'd skipped vacations, sold my motorcycle, and worked late nights just to keep us afloat. I wanted to scream that I'd given her loyalty, stability, and love, things no amount of money could buy. But instead, something in me went quiet. I don't know if it was exhaustion or clarity, but I just looked at her differently in that moment. It was like the fog lifted, and I saw her for who she really was. Not the woman I had married, not the person I thought loved me, but someone who measured me only by the thickness of my wallet. I set my glass of water down on the counter, walked closer, and leaned my hands on the table where she sat. She looked up at me, a little startled by how calm I seemed. "Julia," I said slowly, my words deliberate, "from today on, you can leave everything I own behind and go after a rich man. Let's see if anyone will actually want you." Her eyes widened. She blinked, stunned for a second, as if she hadn't expected me to answer back. Usually, I kept my head down, avoided confrontation, let her words slide off me. But this time, my voice didn't shake. This time, I meant every word. She scoffed, tried to brush it off with a smirk. "Oh, please. You're being dramatic." But I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. I held her gaze until she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. That was the moment the balance shifted between us. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one trying to prove myself, to meet her impossible standards. I wasn't begging for her approval or trying to buy her affection. I was done. She didn't realize it then, but something in me had snapped. That night was the breaking point, the exact second I stopped seeing her as my partner and started seeing her as a weight I needed to let go of. The rest of the evening passed in silence. She went back to her phone, pretending she didn't care, and I sat in the living room, staring at the muted TV screen. My mind raced, but my heart felt strangely calm. I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. I knew things had to change, and this time I wasn't going to be the one bending or sacrificing. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had something better: resolve. And once a man reaches that point, when the disrespect outweighs the love, when the contempt is too loud to ignore, there's no going back. That night, lying in bed next to her, I stared at the ceiling and repeated her words in my head like a mantra. "If you had money, you'd be a better husband." Each time I replayed it, the sting hurt less and the clarity grew sharper. I realized something powerful. A man who ties his worth to someone else's shallow definition will always be a prisoner. But a man who decides to define his own worth is finally free. And that was the night I decided I would no longer be her prisoner. The morning after Julia dropped that line about money and being a better husband, everything looked the same on the surface. But inside me, nothing was the same anymore. We woke up in silence. She got out of bed, scrolled through her phone while sipping coffee, and acted like the night before never happened. That was her way of dealing with things: say something sharp, wound deep, and then carry on like it was normal. But for me, it wasn't normal anymore. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror that morning, toothbrush in hand, staring at my own reflection. I looked tired, sure, but there was something different in my eyes. It wasn't anger, it was resolve. Something inside me had flipped. She thought I'd swallow her words like I always had. She thought I'd keep playing the role of the not good enough husband who tried harder every time she knocked me down. But I wasn't going to play that game anymore. That day, I made a decision. If Julia wanted to measure a man only by his money, then she could go test her theory in the real world. I wasn't going to stop her. In fact, I was going to push her right out the door and let her find out the hard way that not every man is willing to bankroll a woman who brings nothing but contempt to the table. The first thing I did was simple but effective. I pulled my name back from everything she relied on. We had joint accounts, joint credit cards, and a lifestyle she thought would always be cushioned because I handled the bills like clockwork. That week, I went to the bank and separated my finances. I remember the bank manager asking politely, "Are you sure you want to move everything into a personal account?" "Yes," I said, signing the forms with steady hands. "Absolutely sure." Within days, the joint account had only enough to cover the basics of the month, and everything else was under my control. I canceled her secondary credit card too. She didn't notice right away, but I knew the storm would come as soon as she tried to use it. The first test came on a Friday night. She was getting ready to go out with her friends, hair done, heels on, perfume filling the hallway. She grabbed her purse, kissed the air near my cheek like she always did when she wanted to show affection, and left without a word. Around midnight, I heard the front door slam harder than usual. She stomped into the living room, threw her purse onto the couch, and glared at me. "Why did my card decline?" she snapped. I didn't even look up from the TV. "Because it's canceled." Her jaw dropped. "What do you mean canceled? You can't just cancel it." "Actually, I said calmly. I can. My money, my rules. Isn't that what you told me? She sputtered, trying to come up with a response, but nothing came out. For the first time, I watched her realize that her words had consequences. After that, the atmosphere in the house shifted. She was quieter, sulking, giving me those cold glares when she thought I wasn't looking. But I didn't bend. I had been bent for years, always trying to make her happy, and now I was done. I started drawing lines she had never seen from me before. If she wanted something, new clothes, spa days, fancy dinners, I simply said no. Not with anger, not with arguments, just a plain, steady no. One Saturday morning, she dropped a catalog in front of me while I was drinking coffee. Look, this new furniture set would make the living room look amazing. It's only $2,000. I didn't even flip through it. We're not buying that. Her eyes narrowed. You can't just decide that by yourself. Actually, I can, I replied, meeting her gaze. From now on, I decide what happens with my money. You said a rich man would make you happy, so go find one if that's what you need. But don't expect me to keep funding your lifestyle. She clenched her jaw and walked away, muttering something under her breath. I didn't care. The real blow came when her own family and friends started noticing. Julia had always bragged to them about our vacations, about the house, even about the car I bought her years ago. She loved looking like she was living the dream, even if behind the scenes she was tearing me down. So when the shopping trips stopped, when she couldn't show up at gatherings with new outfits or flashy accessories, the questions started rolling in. At a family barbecue, her sister asked casually, "Hey, Jules, didn't you say you were getting that new SUV soon? What happened?" Julia's face turned red. She laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. But I caught her stealing a glance at me, like she knew I'd set this stage on purpose. I didn't expose her directly, not yet. I let her sit with the discomfort, let her realize that the image she had built depended entirely on me. Without my support, she had nothing to flaunt. Here's the part she didn't expect. She actually tried to take me up on my words. She really thought she could find some wealthy guy to swoop in and replace me. I noticed her dressing differently when she went out. More makeup, tighter dresses, perfume that she used to save for special nights. She'd stay out later, sometimes not even bothering with excuses. At first, I didn't care. I wanted her to try. I wanted her to see what rich men really wanted. And sure enough, the cracks showed quickly. She met a guy, some business owner she'd brag about at dinner one night. I stayed quiet, just listening, letting her talk about his car, his connections, his money. 2 weeks later, she came home early from what was supposed to be a girls' night. She looked angry, frustrated, almost humiliated. I asked casually, "What's wrong?" "Rich guy didn't work out." She glared at me, but I could see the truth in her eyes. He had dropped her the moment he realized she wasn't bringing anything to the table. She wasn't young enough to be a trophy anymore, and she didn't have her own wealth or status. All she had were expectations, and men with money don't need to buy expectations. From there, her behavior spiraled. She started trying harder to get my attention, cooking dinners, pretending to be affectionate, making comments like, "Remember when we used to," but it all felt forced, desperate. I wasn't cruel. I didn't yell or throw in her face. I just stayed distant, polite, but cold. Every time she reached out, I reminded her with actions, not words, that the respect she had withdrawn from me was gone for good. The power shift was undeniable. The woman who once thought she could humiliate me with her comparisons was now the one struggling to hold on, realizing too late that she had gambled away the only man who truly cared for her. And the best part? I didn't have to destroy her. I just had to stop carrying her. Once I put the weight down, she collapsed under her own choices. That was the cold execution of my decision. No screaming, no dramatic fights, no threats. Just simple, calculated moves, pulling away her safety nets, letting reality show her what the world truly thought of her, and making sure she understood that I wasn't going to be her plan B while she hunted for plan A. By the time the dust settled, Julia wasn't the one holding the power anymore. I was, and she hated it. But as far as I was concerned, it was only the beginning. When I look back on everything now, what strikes me most is how quickly Julia's confidence crumbled once she realized her grip on me had slipped away. For years, she had moved through life with this unshakable belief that she was above me, that she could say whatever cruel thing she wanted, and I'd just take it, that she could dangle the threat of leaving for a better man, and I'd bend over backwards to keep her. But the moment I stopped playing her game, she had nothing to stand on. And the fall was slow at first, almost invisible, but then it picked up speed like a downhill avalanche until she was left with nothing. The first cracks showed in the way she looked at me. Before, her eyes carried contempt. When I'd come home from work, she'd glance at me with that expression that screamed disappointment without her saying a word. But after I took control of the finances and stopped entertaining her demands, those looks changed. There's uncertainty in them, a flicker of fear that I might actually mean what I had said, that she really would have to leave behind everything I owned and test her value out in the real world. She tried to act like she was still in control, keeping her head high, but I could feel the desperation leaking through. Her attempts to secure a rich man were pitiful to watch, though I never let her see me smirk. She dressed herself up, spent hours on her appearance, tried to charm men who had more than I did, but it always ended the same way. They'd entertain her for a drink or two, maybe a dinner, but nothing serious came of it. She came home one night after being out with one of them, her mascara smudged, her heels in her hand, and she looked at me as if daring me to ask questions. I didn't. I just said good night and went to bed. That silence was more painful for her than any confrontation could have been. She wanted me to care, to fight, to beg. Instead, I left her with the hollow realization that she wasn't as desirable as she thought. When she realized the outside world wasn't offering her anything better, she started turning back toward me, as if she could patch things up. She cooked more often, asked if I needed help with my work, even reached for my hand a few times in public, though months before she'd refused to hold it. But it was too late. Every attempt of hers reeked of survival, not love. She wasn't coming back to me because she wanted me. She was coming back because she couldn't find a way forward without me. And once you've seen someone's love reduce itself to convenience, you can't ever respect it again. The more she tried to repair the image of us, the more people around us began to notice that something was wrong. Her family, who once saw her as this elegant, confident woman, started whispering questions. At a birthday dinner for her mother, Julia had no new jewelry, no new outfit to flaunt, and when her cousin asked about her summer plans, she stammered and said we decided to keep it low-key this year. I watched her cheeks burn with embarrassment, and I said nothing. Let her feel it. She had built her identity around what my money could provide, and now that I wasn't feeding that image, she was exposed for what she really was, someone who had nothing to offer when the shine was gone. Her friends noticed too. The ones she used to brag with stopped inviting her to their outings when she couldn't keep up with their spending. She'd scroll through social media at night, staring at pictures of them traveling or dining out, and I could see the envy eating at her. She would slam her phone down and snap at me for little things, but I didn't respond. The silence between us grew heavier each day, until it felt like we were two strangers inhabiting the same house, waiting for the other to blink first. Then came the begging. It started subtly, little comments about how she missed how things used to be, how she wished we could go back to the way we were. Then it escalated. She cornered me one night in the kitchen, tears in her eyes, telling me she didn't mean what she had said about money, that she was just stressed, that she really did love me. But I could hear the hollowness in her voice. I could tell the tears weren't for me. They were for herself, for the reality she had created and the comfort she had lost. I told her plainly, Julia, I'm not your safety net anymore. You made it clear what mattered most to you, and it wasn't me. So stop pretending this is about love. You're just afraid of being left with nothing. She broke down crying, fell to her knees, begging me to forgive her. And maybe once upon a time, I would have melted at that. Maybe I would have told myself she deserved another chance. But not now. I stood there, calm and unmoved, watching her realize she had pushed me too far. That was the moment she understood I wasn't bluffing, that she couldn't guilt me into carrying her anymore. Her fall didn't end there. When I finally told her to leave, she resisted, screaming, accusing me of being heartless, of abandoning her after everything we'd been through. But I reminded her of her own words, the night she said I'd only be a better husband if I had more money. I told her she was free now to go chase the kind of man she thought she deserved. The look on her face when I said that was a mixture of rage and despair, as if she was suddenly staring at a life she didn't know how to survive. When she packed her bags and left, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The house was quiet, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. The silence wasn't suffocating, it was liberating. For the first time, I could sit in my living room without bracing for criticism, without wondering what comparison she'd throw at me next. My transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was steady. Without Julia draining me emotionally and financially, I found myself with more energy to focus on my own growth. I started investing more seriously, picked up certifications in my field, and before long, I was earning more, not because I was trying to prove anything to her, but because I finally had the freedom to put my energy into myself. I went to the gym, changed my wardrobe, even started traveling when I wanted to, without someone beside me telling me I wasn't enough. The irony is that I did become wealthier, healthier, and more confident, but by then, Julia was long gone, and none of it was for her. It was for me. And when she tried to come back, as I knew she eventually would, I didn't hesitate to shut the door. She called me one evening, her voice small, asking if we could meet for coffee, just to talk. She said she had been wrong, that she realized now how much she had taken for granted. She even hinted that the men she thought would line up for her had disappeared, that she was lonely and struggling. I listened quietly, letting her pour out her regrets. Then I told her the truth. Julia, you wanted a rich man. You wanted a better husband measured by money. Go find him. I'm not him anymore. I'm done being your second choice. And then I hung up. Her begging didn't move me. Her regret didn't soften me. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all. Once someone shows you that your worth in their eyes depends on your bank account, they will never truly love you for who you are. And I wasn't about to let myself forget that again. So her fall was complete, stripped of comfort, reputation, and the illusion of power she once held. And my transformation was equally complete. I had gone from a man begging for scraps of affection to a man who no longer needed her validation.